Hello gang, Tattooed Biker here with you, and tonight I have some harrowing and true Bigfoot encounter stories to share with you. First up, a father and son are hiking with their dog on the Appalachian Trail when they have an encounter with an unknown being which may just tie in with an ongoing FBI investigation. And then, North Carolina pizza delivery driver is startled when a bipedal creature lands in the bed of his pickup truck. And finally, an Alabama resident recalls a ruckus that occurred one autumn night when the neighbor's dogs went ballistic, seemingly attacking or defending against an unknown beast. This is after they had a weird sighting of a terrifying creature. So, enough yapping. Grab your boots and let's ride to Bigfoot country. Number 1. Hey biker, my event happened in the mid-80s. I was with my son and our dog Ginger. When we had our encounter, we were at a shelter on the Appalachian Trail in Amherst County, Virginia. It was the Cow Camp Gap Shelter. Early December, and it was very cold. It would get below 10 degrees that night. Now I'm comfortable in the woods, and teaching my son skills needed to survive is a life skill, like swimming to me. It's good father and son time. We arrived at the shelter shortly before dark and made a fire for warmth and hot food. Now this shelter faces south and has a spring-fed stream separating the shelter from the AT. The AT runs with an old narrow road separating and climbing north to the top of Coal Mountain. My son and I were in good spirits, just sitting, talking, and playing with Ginger. Ginger first saw the figure coming out of the late twilight walking north. It was a surprise that anyone else would be at that location, since the closest house was a hard 3 or 4 miles from the shelter. The figure came within about 100 feet of us. This thing was tall and wore what I thought was a dark brown fur coat. I was aware of Ginger's barking changing to something that, well, I'd never heard from her before that event or after. Without even thinking, I called out to the figure to come over and have some hot drink. And that's when things got, well, difficult to explain. First, this thing turned to face us, and its face looked human in shape, but not human at all in appearance. It turned its whole body, not its neck, and when the creature looked at us, Ginger's barking suddenly changed. Her hind legs appeared uncontrolled and shaking. Her sounds weren't barking sounds at all, but more of a gurgling noise. It's like she was in some kind of pain. I momentarily focused on Ginger, reaching down to her, which didn't stop her suffering at all. I looked at the creature, who returned to continuing its long athletic strides, taking it out of sight really quickly. Ginger resumed barking her aggression warning, but not the same as before the thing had turned to face us. My son then said, "Hey Dad, what just happened to Ginger?" I was thinking, what did that thing do to Ginger when it was still 100 feet away? I wasn't fearful, and Ginger was a handful of golden retriever. We spent a cold night with Ginger at alert the entire time. When we made our way to the warmth of my car the next morning, Ginger curled up with my son in the back seat and slept the entire 3-hour drive home. It would be 8 years later before I returned to that area. Ginger refused to follow me off Coal Mountain south toward the Cow Camp Gap Shelter. When I got close to the woods, half a mile north of the shelter, Ginger just sat with ears perked, refusing any efforts to get her to come to me. I decided that I just wouldn't go without Ginger. 15 years later, while on a Sunday drive to the town of Buena Vista, Virginia, a small town about 15 miles from the AT shelter, I would have a conversation with a teenage waitress. I mentioned my frequent visits to the Mount Pleasant Trail area. She said that I should be careful and not go alone to Coal Mountain because about the time she was born, her uncles had seen something while they were out deer hunting, and that had scared them so badly that they wouldn't hunt or even go back to that area. She was 16 and the time fit I've since learned that the area had a fall in winter, with dogs making a lot of noise at night, with a large number going missing. Even a calf went missing without a trace. The owner was uncommitted as to what was going on, but said his grandfather had a story about what he calls the brown man. He hadn't seen anything, but his neighbors had. Something dreadful happened at that shelter in August of 2011. A hiker was found dead and half buried. It's been several years now, and I still haven't heard of an arrest in that case. I'm interested if there are any similar accounts of these things harming dogs. I am a skeptic looking for explanation for Ginger's actions other than Bigfoot having some sort of weird mind control over dogs, and maybe humans too. Thanks for reading. Signed, Bob.
Quick narrator's note. Well, me being me, I of course did a little digging into the incident that Bob was referring to, and what follows is a reading from a newspaper article I managed to dredge up.
The article reads as follows. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, or FBI, is offering a $10,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of whoever killed Scott A. Lilly, age 30, of South Bend, Indiana, last summer near the Appalachian Trail in central Virginia. FBI Special Agent Steve Duanis, the lead investigator, also disclosed at a news conference on April 23rd that Lilly was half buried. Hikers found his partially buried corpse on August 12th, another agent said, along a side trail to Cow Camp Gap Shelter and George Washington Jefferson National Forest in Amherst County, almost 5 miles north of US 60 trailhead. Duanis said that Lilly's last known contact was from the shelter on July 31st. He wasn't identified until August 16th, and that shelter is about 0.6 miles east of the AT, along the old hotel trail, which loops around and rejoins the AT again about 2 miles north. A state medical examiner in January ruled the death a homicide, saying that the cause of death was catastrophic asphyxia by suffocation. Noted Mike Morehart, special agent in charge of the FBI's Richmond office, who announced the reward. Most of Lilly's gear hasn't been recovered, he said, including new trail shoes, a blue or purple backpack, a Nintendo game, and an AT handbook. Lilly used a trail named Stonewall, and he had begun hiking south from Maryland in late June, intending to go all the way to Springer Mountain, resupplying periodically through Walmart gift cards sent by his mother, according to his family. Lilly's younger sister, Allison, joined Sheriff Jimmy Ayers III in urging anyone with information to call the FBI tip line at 1-800-261-1044-FREE. Quote, he was a 30-year-old man living out a dream by hiking the AT and visiting Civil War battlefields. Our family will never be the same. We need closure, she said, telling reporters later that she thought that he planned to find a new place to live in the South after his hike. Ayers said, any information, even if it seems trivial, may be the piece that solves this puzzle. Morehart said the combined investigative team, including National Park Service AT Rangers, U.S. Forest Service law enforcement, and Virginia State Police, have conducted 83 interviews of hikers, maintainers, and others in multiple states and 2 other countries, including all long-distance hikers known to have been in the area during that period. Timothy A. Hemphy, U.S. Attorney for the Western District of Virginia, noting ATC's involvement as well, said that the level of cooperation on this case is remarkable. He stressed that his office is placing a high priority on this open case, as well as all unsolved murders along the Blue Ridge Parkway and a 1996 killing of 2 women hikers away from the trail in Shenandoah National Park. But right now, he's seen no connection among them. Duanis, declining to provide more specifics about the coroner's report or the many possibilities being investigated, said that the reward announcement and news conference are part of an investigative strategy to generate more leads, particularly from 2011 hikers who may not have seen last August news reports, and from 2012 hikers noticing something unusual. Quote, "I have no reason to believe the trail is any more dangerous. Hikers just have to be aware and take all the normal precautions." End quote. Number 2. Hey TB, this incident occurred in 1990 in Grays Creek Township, North Carolina. At the time, I was a pizza delivery driver. And on this particular night, I was driving and returning from a delivery when a black, 7-foot-tall creature with a human-like face seemed to just fall out of the sky and crashed into the back bed of my pickup truck. Its expression was of a murderous, hate-filled rage, and it roared at me after crawling out of the bed and stood there on the road. I drove off in a blind panic. Curiously, I have no memory of driving back to the pizza joint, only that one moment that I was driving away from the creature, looking at it in my rearview mirror, and the next I was just back at my job site. When I attempted to get out of my truck, my knees buckled, and I was gasping for air. I needed the armrest just to hold myself up. The owner wanted to take me to the hospital, but I eventually just got him to agree to take me home. My boss and father examined the truck after hearing my story. They found the bedsides near the rear window where it had landed were damaged, as well as blood and tufts of hair. There was also this horrible odor. I believe that the only thing that made sense was that the creature had been in a tree and it had fallen out or intentionally jumped and landed in the rear of my truck. Thanks, Biker, for letting me share. Signed, Lonnie. Number 3. Hey TB, I've lived in the Wiregrass area my entire life, so I'm familiar with some of the cryptids in Alabama. Although I live within city limits, the area behind my house and the neighborhood is extremely forested, so much so that deer often hang around back there, as I've seen several of their tracks. A few years ago, my brother and I were in our backyard, which has direct access to the forest. The rear right side of our fence line was filled with thick bushes and small trees. In the center of our yard is a large workshop garage, and to the right of that is a tree with a rope swing that our dad set up for us, which is where we usually spend our time. It was early autumn when this event happened. As we were sitting around and goofing off, all the birds and other little critters suddenly went silent. At that time, I didn't know that this usually means that a big predator is nearby. We didn't notice the silence at first, but then we heard the sound of branches breaking, which made us turn towards the noise. I could just barely make out a big white body moving in the brush, which scared the hell out of me because I didn't know what it could be. I got my brother's attention, and we saw that it had drawn even closer. Both of us were terrified, so we slowly made our way back to our front porch. Whatever it was stopped moving and just watched us there. Once we got inside, we refused to go back out, but we didn't explain why to our parents. I wouldn't be posting about this if not for what happened a bit later. I was sleeping in my bed, and I was woken by the neighbor's dogs. They were all pretty big and usually don't bark during the night, but this time, all 3 of these dogs were barking at once. One of them sounded like it was yelping in pain, while it was clear that the other 2 were fighting something. I didn't want to go back out on the porch because I was too scared. Plus, it was like 3 a.m. So I just opened the window in my room and tried to look outside. I could only hear what was happening, but whatever it was very big. I could hear it wrestling with the dogs, but eventually the sound stopped and I could hear it running away, and it sounded really heavy. I've gone through a list of what it could have been, but I've ruled out a coyote, bear, panther, or a snake. Does anyone else out there know about this stuff or have had any similar experiences? Thanks for reading. Signed, Oscar.
Another quick narrator's note here. Alabama cryptid activities have been on my radar for, well, at least the last 6 or 7 years. with multiple reports from there, including Bigfoot, cryptid canines, and the occasional white thing, as locals call it. A creature is what I believe to be an albino Bigfoot.
And there it is. All the true Bigfoot reports and encounter stories that I have for you guys tonight. I can't wait to hear your thoughts and theories about these in the comment section, but please, keep it respectful to the witnesses. And if you have a story that you'd like to share, just send your experience to the email address in the description, and your story might just wind up in a future episode. And hey, thanks for riding with me this evening. I really appreciate you. And as always, stay curious, stay vigilant, stay safe, and I'll be seeing you on down the road a ways. Biker, out.